Jin Hee, Wayne, Steve Conley, Sarah O'Haran, Charlotte Davis, Dan Ryder. Did I miss somebody? Wayne, Steve Conley, Sarah O'Haran, Charlotte Davis, Dan Ryder. Okay. Jill, who are we missing? Did I miss somebody?
Phyllis and AC.
Yeah, AC is going to be joining. He just called in. Is it the only one you're missing?
Was it Victoria coming?
Oh, and Victoria was going to come as well.
Phyllis.
And Phyllis. Phyllis is trying to get in. All right. We'll just pause. I'm sorry. Apologize for that. We'll just pause for a moment until we reach a quorum.
And also, Jill, is somebody listening to this on YouTube because you can hear the delay?
I'm trying to turn it off.
I'm sorry. Apologize for that. We'll just pause for a moment until we reach a quorum.
And also, Jill, is somebody listening to this on YouTube because you can hear the delay? I'm trying to turn it off.
Steve.
Yes.
I'm emailing with Phyllis. She's trying to access it. She doesn't have a commercial Zoom account, which I don't think you need, but she says I just told her to call in if it's not going to work on the Zoom.
Okay.
Let me know when you want me to resume recording.
Yeah, when we have a quorum.
Jill, you can let Phyllis know. Sometimes there's like a lower space on the invite that just says join from your browser or something. You don't need a Zoom account. That might be what's catching her. Like if you hit the first one, it says open Zoom meetings, but then there's usually a kind of less obvious one link under that says join from your browser. She might go do that.
Thank you.
Okay, I just spoke with AC. He's having a bit of technical difficulty as well. So apologize for the delay. So how is everybody doing? I know it's been a little dry in Western Maryland and on the Eastern Shore in particular. Mary, how are things out your way?
We're extremely dry. It has been quite a long time since we've had measurable rain, and we're not expected to get any for at least another week or more. It's pretty serious.
Well, let's hope Mother Nature cooperates here, although the forecast, other than a little rain on Fridays, not terribly promising.
No.
Sarah, how was the grape harvest this year? Or is it still going on?
No, we're finished. Mostly good. We actually got too much rain right at the end with we got some of that hurricane rain. We got 2 weeks of nice wet swampy rain, which is not great for us. But up till then it was great. And it was just the last few things. So overall it's a good year. I wish I could have sent it to you, Mary. You probably wanted it, but you can never choose. So
we watched it go east of us constantly. Yeah, we got none of that. So
yeah,
it was really interesting to watch the patterns and how that moved.
Yeah, it is funny how isolated it can be, or frustrating, I guess, depending on where you're standing. But because we had beautiful weather until then, and then we can handle rain, but it was rain and like 75, 80 degrees, which is perfect for the late season molds that want to grow. And
Steve,
so
this is recording on the.
Oh, I thought we weren't recording. I thought we weren't recording because well, anyway, that's still all true.
I can stop the live stream and start over again.
I thought we had turned it off already because we didn't have our quorum. Didn't you say you turned it off?
Pause, but that's all right. You know.
I mean, whatever. It's all true. I don't care who hears it, but anybody who asks. But
the recording is paused, but not the live stream. Would you like the live stream to stop?
Oh, would it create a problem for you?
We can find out.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I'm not bothered.
But, hey, Jill, we have AC.
Ah, perfect.
Do we have 10?
Let's
9?
count them up. We have Mary, Sarah, AC, John J, Jenny Kim, Wayne Richard, Steve Conley, Charlotte Davis, and Dan Ryder.
9.
Well, 9 makes a quorum. We're trying to find Phyllis. Is she calling in, Jill, or do you?
I have not heard back.
All right. Can someone on my team call her, not Jill, and just help her walk through getting on the Zoom? And Madam Chair, we do have a quorum, so maybe we should just proceed if you're ready.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll begin. I think we've done a rundown of board members that are present, but maybe we should go ahead and include any other guests and staff that are participating with our meeting today.
Well, I don't think we have anybody outside of the organization, but I can call on my team members to introduce themselves in case
yes,
folks don't know them. Of course, I'm Steve McHenry, Executive Director. Jill, I see you. You want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm Jill Zarin, Communications Specialist for MARBIDCO.
Tina?
Hi, Tina Wilkins, Senior Accounting Coordinator.
Allison?
Hi, good morning. Allison Rowe, Financial Programs Officer and Program Coordinator.
Sierra?
Hi, everybody. Sierra Chris, Financial Programs Associate.
Brittany?
Good morning, Brittany Rawlings, Financial Program Specialist.
Brian?
Hey, good morning, Brian Cadden, Financial Program Specialist.
And Stacy?
Stacy Kabopsik, Assistant Director.
All right, so we have a majority of the team with us today.
Great to, great to see everyone. And quickly, while everyone is together, I'd like to give a big thank you to our staff for all that they've been doing and how hard they've been working for us. Our next item on the agenda is our approval of the minutes from our previous board meeting, which happened in May. They are rather lengthy. I hoped everyone had a chance to go over them, but if you need a few moments, we can do that, or we can entertain a motion for approval.
Steve Conley raises his hand, Madam Chair.
Oh, there it is. Yes, I forgot to look that we can have hands up.
I
Yes,
would move
Mr.
that-
Conley.
Yeah, I would move that we accept the minutes provided.
All right. Moved and
I'll-
is there a
I'll
second?
second. It's Sarah. I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as presented to us. All those in favor, oh, excuse me, first, is there any further discussion? If not, then let's go to a vote. All those in favor say aye or raise a hand and we'll figure out how to count them.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries and the minutes from the previous meeting have been approved. Next item on our agenda is staffing and financial updates, and we will turn that over then to Steve and let him take off from there.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I do want to acknowledge that we have our newest member of the Board of Directors, Phyllis Kilby, has joined. So Phyllis, welcome. I just wanted to report, as many of you will recall, we were very short-staffed a couple of years ago. We were down at least 2 staff members for a good portion of time. We actually last year had to suspend our Mr. Biff loan program for about 3 months due to the staffing shortage. And that's actually going to be reflected in some of the numbers we're going to look at in a little bit. But I'm just really pleased to tell you we're fully staffed. We have one of the best assemblages of MARBIDCO team members that we've ever had. And you met many of them just a minute ago. So all is good in the staffing department at this point. So good news there. Madam Chair, while I have the floor, I'll just keep going through the agenda if you're open to that. I did want to update everybody on where we ended last year, and Tina's going to put up the operating budget summary from last year.
Jill, can you enable the sharing, please?
Jill, can you let Tina share? There we go. So here's how we finished out last year. We took in a little more income than we were actually expecting. So we took in all in from all sources, including a higher than usual state appropriation, just under $25 million. In terms of the operating income analysis, we actually exceeded our expectations.
Steve,
Yeah.
Steve, this is Mary. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to go back just a touch into that staffing and financial updates.
Yeah.
We have to appoint the auditing committee.
Oh, is that not later in the agenda, Madam Chair?
No, it's there under the staffing and financials
Oh,
is where it's
Madam-
listed.
Madam Chair, you jumped ahead into FY25, I think. At least what I'm looking at. My staff will correct me.
Yeah, we're on the second bullet point down under the staffing and financial update. So it's the fiscal 2024 operating budget. And then the following is the.
Sorry,
No
sorry,
worries.
sorry.
All good.
No worries. So anyway, looking at the operating income from last year, we exceeded our expectations there by over $150,000. So good news. Tina, if you'll scroll down a little bit. And then on expenses, you can see there, our operating expenses came in under budget. That's pretty typical. We generally come in around 95% of what we budget for operational expenses. This is not the programmatic expenses that I'm talking about. Under programmatic expenses was a different story. It was a down year. Our core loans fell off. As I mentioned, the Mr. Biff program was offline for 3 months, and lending demand was down last year as well. And on top of that, our next generation program applications fell off last year. So we normally do close to 3 million a year. We budgeted 3.8, but we actually came in at just over 1.3. So in terms of expenditures in the programmatic areas, things were down more than would reasonably be anticipated. So as you can see, we spent less than half of what we had planned to in the programmatic area. And you can see there we finished the year with some surplus funds. I do want to contrast this with FY23 just so you can have a look at that. So we overall we took in more money than we were budgeting, but less money than last year all in, because we, for one thing, had a more normal state appropriation of in this case, which was around something over $5 million. Our expenditures were operational expenditures were less by about 300,000. And again, we actually came in at 89% of what was budgeted. The reason we came in so much less was we didn't have the staff that we had planned to have during that year. So as we wrapped up the year, so no surprise there in reality. But if you go down to look at the programmatic expenditures, we had a much more normal year. In fact, we had a record year of core program funding. As you can see there, just under $9 million. And we also had a normal year with the next generation program. So especially grants came in a little less than we had budgeted, but the other program areas were under budget, but not by necessarily a huge amount, except I'm looking at the core grant programs. Normally we plan to spend about 230,000 there, so we were actually down there by half. But you can see we finished the year with about half of what we did last year. Next slide, please, Tina.
Which one are you looking for?
I think we've now finished with the review of the FY24 operating and programmatic budget. And we sent you the programmatic updates to review. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on them unless somebody has questions about that. So if there are no questions about our budget from last year, we will jump over then to the audit. And I'm pleased to report that as we have every year, we had a clean audit from our outside auditors. And you're going to need to scroll a little bit, I think. Yeah, if you'll advance to page 5. And while she's doing that, I want to thank the accounting team led by Tina for their great work on this. Tina and Leanne McCullough always do a great job working with the auditor. And I should also point out, while I'm thinking of it, Madam Chair, that we had our first legislative audit this year, which was a pretty intensive exercise. Not only were Tina and Leanne involved, but Stacy, Allison, and Daniela from the financial program staff were also involved. It was a very thorough review of several of our programs, and I'm delighted to report that we came through the whole process with flying colors. So good news on the auditing front from a couple different perspectives. But while we're looking at the condensed financial statement here, you can see that, as I pointed out, we actually had a larger than normal appropriation, plus we had early loan repayments come in at a pretty healthy rate. So we actually finished the year on the plus almost $14 million side. And if you'll scroll down there, Tina, you can see there the liabilities and both current and non-current liabilities are relatively modest. And if you scroll down there, you can see that our net position for the year increased by $13.5 million. So we are in very good shape going into FY25, excuse me. And as I think you all know, we are now required to be self-sustaining with our core programming going forward after this fiscal year. So we are well positioned to enter the new future where we don't have a regular state appropriation for our core programs. So happy to take questions about that page if there are any, but if there are not, we can go over to page 10. And you can see here how the auditors look at our income is they do not count our appropriations as operating revenue. So you can see there that we had operating revenues of just under 1.5 million, program revenue of $270,000. We made grants during the year of 1.2 million. Had administrative costs, not including salaries and benefits, of 300,000, salary costs of 1.2 million, and a little bit of depreciation expense for total operating expenses of 2.7 million. And again, they're mixing up operational expenses and grants in that number. The provision for loan losses went up just a bit. As you know, we reserve, actually today we're reserving 2.58% for loan losses of loans that we have outstanding. And we just, because our book loans continues to increase a bit, we added a little bit to that loan loss reserve. So it's now about $1.1 million. And then on the non-operating revenues, they've included here the state appropriation of 15.2 million, which included funding for both the core programs as well as the next generation program. We earned some interest on our investments. That's a money market account principally, I believe. We had, I believe, 2 next gen easement option purchases repay last year. And but we also funded several option purchases at 1.6 million. And then we took in some minus amount of other miscellaneous amount of other revenue. I'm guessing that's late fees and whatnot, Tina. So you can see there the change in that position was $13.7 million. So we're in good shape at starting the year with a net position of $63 million. All right. Are there any questions about the audit? All right, hearing none. Madam Chair, this is the point in the agenda which you were trying to get to, where we need to appoint an audit committee to meet with the outside auditors. We do this every year. It's always great for a committee of the board to have an unfiltered discussion with our outside auditor. And last year, Mary, you and John and Mark Krebs were the audit committee. And the three of you happen to be our board officers, but it doesn't have to be that way. So Mark could not join us today. I did not ask him if he'd want to serve again, but I think it's reasonable since he's our secretary treasurer and the only CPA serving on the board that he might want to serve again. Are there other members of the board that would like to serve on the audit committee? I will tell you, it's not a terribly heavy lift. Generally is a 15, 20-minute conversation with the auditors to just go over things and make sure all the questions of the board members have been answered.
I'll serve again, Steve.
John, thank you very much. So we have Mark and John.
I will also. Can we have more than three?
Oh,
Or
you have as many as you'd like.
okay.
Well, Madam Chair, they're not rushing to raise their hands.
Yeah, I don't see any. So three, I believe it will be the minimum, and as long as Mark agrees, then we can go ahead with those three.
All right, is there a motion?
Dan just raised his hand.
Dan did. All right, great. Great.
All right, so I think there's a motion from somebody coming to have Mary, Dan, John, and Mark serve as the audit committee this year.
Do we hear a motion? Thank you, Phyllis. Second?
Second, this is Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. Any additional comments? Anyone else want to jump in? No, any additional comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was the
Aye.
only.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, I think that might have been a majority. Those opposed? Hearing none, that motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay,
Okay.
Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tina, we're going to the look back at the last 9 years. We always provide this report and analysis to you this time every year. It gives you a chance to see where we've been, and we look at things broadly by each of the major divisions of our programming. We have core loans, we have specialty loans, we have core grants, we have specialty grants, and we have the next generation land preservation programs. So you can see here in terms of core loans, the number of projects we've funded each year since 2016, the dollar amount of those projects that were funded, and then the amount of commercial leverage that is attributable to those projects that were funded. You can see there that last year was down, as I mentioned earlier, was down significantly by actually more than half. We funded 14 projects. We've listed here the $1.3 million commitment that you all have made for the USDA MPILP project. That's the livestock processing loan program that the USDA is providing 3/4 of the funding for. You put up a 1.3 match of that, so we have set that aside. I've included that we envision that for statistical purposes here, that would be 2 projects. So we added that in to give you a sense as to where we are with our core loan commitment dollars the last year. And then you can look at the average over the 9-year period and see that we are right at $6 million. We've been using the $6 million core programs figure for several years now as kind of the average number we would expect to due each year. And so we're right on the money there. Tina, if and you can see there the average loan amount in the core categories at $243,000. Just scroll down a little bit, Tina, we'll look at specialty loans, and you can see there where we are. We were down significantly last year over the prior year, where we had funded 4 in 2023 and only 12 last year. We were behind last year, as I hinted at earlier. And then if you scroll down to all loans, adding specialty loans and core loans together, you can see where we are all in there. So, and also just scroll on down to incentive grants. These include both core program funded grants as well as specialty funded program grants. As you know, we've received grants from DNR, from SMATIC, from direct appropriations for livestock processing, wood processing, etc. So you can see there how we've done. And then if you scroll down more, Tina, you can see in this next section, the next gen programs, both the original easement option purchase program, as well as the small acreage program. As I mentioned earlier, last year was a down year relative to what we've normally have seen. So hopefully it'll pick up. We just approved, by the way, 2 more. You all just approved 2 more next gen program grants just this morning. So we're on a better track. And we're on a record track right now for the Mr. Biff program, which I'll talk about in a minute. So you can see an all-in where we were last year relative to the record-setting year, actually 2 years prior in terms of core loan volume. And then not only are we making new grants and loans of many types, we also have a lot of work to do to service those loans. And we include all that so you get a more accurate sense of the amount of staffing effort that is required to not only make new grants and loans, but also service them once they have been made. So you can see there how things stack up. In the loan servicing department, it was actually a pretty typical year numerically because we have a lot of loan modifications and early payoffs and other kinds of changes that borrowers need once we've already made a loan to them. So that's that report. I'm going to move on unless there are questions. We have a new analysis for you that we wanted to share that we provided to you. And this is a look at just the specialty loan and grant programs and how they've been utilized. The number of these programs has doubled in recent years, especially by act of the General Assembly giving us new programs to administer, including the Waterman's Microloan Program. So we wanted you to just get a snapshot of where that program is. We've had $1.5 million appropriated so far. We've spent not quite half of that, as you can see there. Peter, can you scroll down to the next one? We have our original Shellfish Aquaculture Financing Fund program. This is the main oyster farm financing program that we've had. DNR, using some of its money and federal money, provided us originally just over $3.6 million. And you can see that we have made $5.7 million worth of loans with that original $3.6 million. And we still have something under $1 million left to lend. So that money is revolving and cycling through very well, although it's been a little slow lately in that program. We have a very specialized remote setting aquaculture loan program. We've only received $134,000 from DNR for that program. That's actually Maryland Port Administration funds that were provided from the port to DNR to us related to oyster habitat restoration. And we've made 6 loans, and we have the ability to make another loan or 2 with the money there. We have the new oyster shucking house loan program that was funded last year with $1 million. We've made 1 loan so far for $200,000. Keep going, Tina. And we have the newly launched last year livestock processing loan program targeted to large animal processing as well as blue catfish processing. USDA has made a $3.8 million grant commitment to us, which we've matched with $1.3 million, as I explained earlier. We have 2 applications pending, but none have been funded to this point. Moving on to the next loan program. We had a $100,000 grant from the Maryland Energy Administration back in 2008. And those funds have actually revolved 5 times and funded $100,000 worth of loan requests. The maximum loan in that program is $30,000. And we have a fund balance of $86,000. So that $100,000 has cycled through. We make about 1 loan every other year or so. And that program is still at work for those that need it for on-farm energy efficiency projects. And then the final loan that's funded from special resources is SMATEX revolving loan program for Southern Maryland businesses. These are loans of $10,000 to $20,000 in size. And you can see there that we've made 7 loans on that program. We funded 2 in 2024, but none last year. So it's a program that's occasionally used. And I believe we made 1 actually this year. So it's not recorded here. So in terms of the grants that are specially funded, the General Assembly has appropriated $1.4 million for livestock processing equipment. Again, during the pandemic, our local slaughter facilities were overwhelmed. We had 18 prior to the pandemic. We lost 1, and then we lost 1 to a fire last summer. So we're down to 16, small to mid-sized processing facilities for large animals in Maryland. We have 4 blue catfish processing facilities. We'd like to have more as we need to deal with the blue catfish problem, which you all are very well aware of. So you can see where we are overall with the utilization of those livestock processing grant funds. And then you all will remember that back in 2020, the General Assembly modified our core programs appropriations to stretch it out by an additional year to free up funds for the Certified Local Farm and Food Fish Aggregation Program. This is to support the state's 20% local food procurement goal by state agencies. And so what we're trying to do with this program is to aggregate the demand of small and mid-sized farmers to serve wholesale or institutional markets only, not retail markets. I mean, there could be an ancillary benefit of retail markets, but the purpose is to fund wholesale and institutional market demand by having product that is available for those supply chains. And you can see there how we've done with that program. We've also partnered with USDA last year on the MDA, using USDA funds on the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Grant Program. And we have we have 5 grants pending USDA approval from last year that MDA submitted to USDA. And then we have 5 grants pending approval currently in that program. And this is the last year of funding, FY25, for that program, unless it is extended. And I'll talk about that in our budget request in a minute. As a result of the paper mill closure in Western Maryland, just a major, major loss to the state, really the entire state, not just Western Maryland. The General Assembly has appropriated $1.5 million to us for the Wood Products Industry Equity Investment Fund. And we also had a $100,000 additional grant from DNR last year to support value-added wood processing projects. And you can see where we are there over the last 2 years with that program. And so we're doing fairly well. We're about to send another list of projects to the committee to review under that program. And then finally, we have 2 regions of the state that provide equity incentive matching funds for our core loan programs. And one is provided out of SMATIC in the Tri-County Council in Southern Maryland, and the other is provided by the Upper Shore Regional Council. And you can see there how those funds would be utilized. What that program does is when we have an applicant, a loan applicant from that region, if they provide equity, it's automatically matched up to 5% as part of the underwriting for that loan. And so it helps improve the credit quality of the application and provide needed equity sometimes the borrowers need to leverage our financing and commercial bank financing. So first time we've done this comprehensive overview, we wanted to share it with you today. Happy to take any questions about that. Alrighty, moving right along then. We're a little behind schedule, so I'm going to try to pick up the pace here a bit. Tina's going to put up the FY25 operating budget. And you can see there where we are today. We are having, well, let me speak about the income first. You can see there we've taken in 15 of the 21 million we expect to receive this year. Does not include our state appropriations, which we just received our first half of our state appropriation very recently at $2.1 million. So it's actually a little more than that. We're 25% of the way through the year. So looking at the operating income, we're running ahead of schedule there. And good news is our CD income is going to increase in this fiscal year. So we're going to be doing by more than expected. So we're going to be doing very well in the operating income category. Looking at the operational expenditures, we're pretty much right on track there, 24% overall. Been doing a lot of outreach and training and travel this summer and fall, so we're running a little ahead of there, but we'll have some downtime a little bit later in the year. And then in terms of programmatic expenditures, I mentioned that the Mr. Biff program is running at a $12 million pace. We've already approved $3.4 million in mostly Mr. Biff program loans. The other programs, the specialty loan programs, including the Waterman's program, are running behind where we thought they might be. Specialty grant programs are running a little behind. This is as of September 30th. That will significantly pick up as the new WIPI and livestock grants get recorded on the books when October activities picked up. So that's not a true reflection of where things stand today. In terms of core grant programs, we're right on target there. Budget of $235,000, and we're at $58,000 right now. The Next Gen program is a little behind schedule, but as I mentioned, we approved 2 new projects today. You all did. So we're right on track, I think, with Next Generation. So overall, you can see where we are. And we're having, I think, a pretty good year on the whole. And we also provided to you the programmatic activities overview. In the interest of time, oh, there it is. We can very quickly see where we are. And that's as of September 30th. Continue to scroll down. So happy to take any questions about that. All righty, let's move along then to the loan loss reserve. Well, we're on early loan payoff. We'll
Sorry, I don't think I have that one up here, Steve, the loan loss reserve.
okay, I can just summarize. It's very simple. We are reserving today 2.58%, as I mentioned when we were talking about the audit, which is pretty typical of the number we reserve. That includes both core loans and specialty loans. Of course, our specialty loans are unsecured loans, so there's no collateral security associated with them. So the risk associated with them would be a bit higher than our collateralized core loans. So our actual loan losses to date are about 1.2%. So, but working with our outside accountants and you all, we have decided to reserve it. So the risk rate of each of our loans and the entire portfolio is risk rated at 2.85% today. The bigger news, and this is good news, is our average interest rate across our entire loan portfolio, the booked portfolio, is 4.11%. That exceeds the target of 4% that you all set some years ago. And during the pandemic, you may, those of you that were on the board at the time may recall that to provide pandemic relief, we've greatly lowered the interest rates for about 230 of our core program loans to provide relief to our borrowers during that time. And the average interest rate fell down to as low as, going from memory here, Tina, 3.4%. And it's been slowly inching its way up over time as we have returned to more normal sorts of lending and interest rates. And we're now at 4.11% today. So a bit of a milestone for MARBIDCO. Going back to what you were going to show us, Tina, with early loan repayment. You can see there where we stand today. We have 253 loans that have entirely paid off. Next slide, the next cell. And you can see the distribution of those paid off loans. Mr. Biff, of course, leads the way. That's our workhorse program. 61 shellfish aquaculture loans have also paid off in full, which is amazing. These are unsecured loans that we make to oyster farmers, and we've had really very good success with that program. I think nearly all of the pandemic adjustment loans have paid off. Tina, is that right? Do we have any outstanding at this point?
There's 2, maybe 3 that will pay off on December 1st.
Okay, so we're coming up on the end of those pandemic adjustment relief loans that we made. Those were $10,000 loans to help people that were in crisis at the beginning of the pandemic period. And then you can see here the early loan payoffs. We pay attention to this because we do put it into our loan projections modeling. And you can see there we have had as high as $3.9 million pay off earlier than expected in FY22. And last year was 1.3 million. The year before was 1.8 million. We're at 615,000 so far, 1 quarter into fiscal year. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. Happy to take questions about that. Seeing none. Okay. I did want to bring your attention to the projections for self-sustainability. And we'll start with the $6 million projection, Tina. You all at the last meeting directed the staff to comprehensively look at the loan projections modeling and then share those findings with the programs committee, which we did a week or so ago. And you can see here, and Tina, you're going to want to move to the right if you can. You can see here that we have done that. So we've taken and I don't know if you can show the fiscal year and show the far right-hand side. There we go. That's good. We've thoroughly redid the model. I want to thank Allison and Leanne particularly for their work on this. And you can see there we have the core loans that have been booked already, the new loans to be booked at the designated dollar amount. Remember, we're using $6 million as the average. We include some specialty loan program income, but not principal. That's a change. We had principal from the specialty loans revolving through the model. It doesn't make sense to do that. So we're not doing that going forward. And you can see here that we're starting with $12.6 million on hand to make these core loans. And you can see there the funds projected to be able to lend in this year. And you can see how and the reconciliation column is what we use to allow the model to cycle through year to year. The last column there is if we had a shortfall, will we need to borrow funds temporarily on a short-term basis? And the dollar amount listed there is interest that we would need to borrow for the entire year of the amount that would need to be borrowed. Or I'm sorry, that's the amount that would need to be borrowed. And there would be a little bit of accruing interest if that occurred earlier that would flow into the expenses. So good news, we are self-sustaining at $6 million. We're a little bit short in the final year. So as you look at the highlighted columns on the far right, you can see there, if everything went exactly according to the model, we would need to borrow $839,000 to complete $6 million in lending. And we would also not be doing any grant making that year under the model. So very, very close to fully self-sustaining. The other highlighted column there is just something I wanted you to be aware of many years down the road, but the modeling at the interest rate of 4.25% on a 15-year amortization in new core loans book, just coming up a little bit short on operating revenues. That's the thing we always talk about when we look at the budget. So many years out, the model suggests that we're going to be paying closer attention to that. I should note too that with the core loans to be booked, as well as the current loans that are booked, we're using a 2.5% loan loss, but we're actually have lost to date half that amount. So the programs committee asked us to run a model where we took that into account, and Tina's going to show that to you, the 6% with a 1.5% loan loss rate. And you can see what that change does is it basically wipes out almost entirely any shortfall in the 2036. So again, we are going to be fully self-sustaining, we believe, at the $6 million annual level. So the next question is, if you were paying attention, is Steve, we're running at a $12 million rate this year, which is the track we're on. So Tina's going to put up the $12 million spreadsheet to just show you what that would look like. And so if we did $12 million in core loans this year, but went on and did $6 million every year thereafter, you can see there that we are in completely good shape. The reason for that is we're getting interest and loan payoffs earlier, and it's making up the difference in the final year. So we're in good shape. Now, the downside is we might need to curtail our grant making 5, 6, and 7 years from now. If, you know, we were in need of funds to lend rather than to make as grants. But overall, the numbers, the shortfall there, minuscule in the scheme of things, very manageable. Just the grant making might have to be curtailed during that period. According to the model. Dan has a question.
Yes, Steve. Help me understand the finance principle that's at play here. At $12 million, I would think that we would have more money available in the short term, but according to the model, we actually have less compared to the $6 million.
Right. Well, that's because you're making a $6 million additional investment in loans in the first year. So that's $6 million less to be spread over the succeeding year.
Oh,
Year.
I see. Right. Got it. Yep. Okay. Thanks.
All right. So we wanted to show you sort of a qualified worst case. If you were paying attention to what I presented earlier, we did $9 million in core program loans during 3 preceding years. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and then 5 or 6 years ago. So what if we had 3 succeeding years of $9 million? What would that look like? And here's what it is. It would be rather more challenging because, Dan, to answer your question about the 6 million additional in the early years, we'd have an extra 3 million on top of that. So a little more challenging beginning in fiscal 2027 in terms of grant making. We might have to temporarily borrow a little bit from our line of credit with CoBank to make up a lending shortfall. But in the scheme of things, this is really quite manageable, just that our grant making would be curtailed in 2027 to 2029. But then we're back on track and things pick up steadily after that, according to the model. And again, this is at the 2.5% reserve level. We don't have it ready. We can show you the 1.25% if we could, but Tina's doesn't have it stacked up right in her queue right now. But we think this is manageable, is the bottom line. So happy to take any questions about the modeling. I'm greatly encouraged by what we see here. The General Assembly has given us what we need to be self-sustaining. We have managed the funds in a way that contributes to that goal, and so we're excited about that. So happy to take any questions. All right. Well, we're running behind schedule, so let's go on to the next item, Madam Chair, if I might, and look at the 2025 legislative session, which is going to be interesting. As I'm sure you all have been reading in the papers, the state is projecting to have about a $1 billion structural deficit going into 2026. By 2028, it's projected to be closer to $3 billion if everything were funded the way it's currently projected to be under, state law, et cetera. State agencies are going to be cutting back somewhat, and adjustments to particularly the K-12 education spending plan will almost undoubtedly have to be made because of that structural shortfall. Our friends at the Rural Maryland Council, unfortunately, at the beginning of the fiscal year, took a 25% budget cut they weren't expecting as part of an effort to get a handle on the budgetary situation that the state is facing. So there was a $150 million cut rate at the beginning of the fiscal year, and the RMC lost, I think it was 2.3, 2.4 million of their $9 million appropriation for the year for Mr. Rimpif and Meredith Grant Program. There's also some concern about the transportation budget, which is separately funded. Charlotte, did you want to make a comment, or you just?
No, I'm here. Sorry, I heard you. Nothing to add.
We're going into a kind of a downtime. The good news for us is we no longer need that core programs appropriation of $2.3 million. So that is going by the wayside. The next generation programs are also, we think, adequately funded for at least 3 more years. And if we get additional early or regular easement option repayments, then we might be able to go an additional year as well. So we're in good shape with next generation for the time being. DBM has our projected budget at 1.6 million for fiscal 26. So it's not only not including the 2.3 million, which of course we don't need, and the statute now has expired on that mandated spending, but it also doesn't include $435,000 for the local farm food and fish aggregation grant program. So the Food System Resiliency Council has asked that that program be funded at $1 million next year and refocus the efforts of that program away from the small farmer aggregation grants and more towards the local government or regional council aggregation grants to fund those larger projects that might have a bigger impact relative to providing local foods to school systems, as well as state and local institutions, and potentially food banks and maybe even wholesale markets. So we have submitted that recommendation and request to DBM for that extra $1 million. So that would take us up to 2.4 million, again, down from 4.1 going into next year. The budget does also include the final year of $500,000 in funding for the Waterman's Microloan Program, $500,000 for the Wood Products Equity Investment Program, and $400,000 for livestock processing grants. So that's our request for next year, and we're hopeful that the DBM and the governor will see fit to act favorably on this request. I'm happy to take any questions about this, if there are any. All right. So I think everybody understands what we're trying to do there. Let's move on, if we might, to a report from the Programs Committee. And Tina's going to find that. And I want to thank the members of the committee, which included Charlotte, John, Phyllis, Sarah, and Wayne, who are on the call today, as well as Paul Goinger and Mark Krebs. The committee, as I mentioned, looked at what you just saw relative to loan projections, and they were fine with what we presented. They asked a lot of good questions. Keep scrolling there, Tina. Next, we talked about the loan participation program at some length. And again, I want to thank Wayne and his colleagues at Horizon Farm Credit. Ended up being a much bigger project than we thought. I was at the National Conference of State Ag Finance Programs a couple weeks ago, and learned from colleagues in Kentucky that the Farm Credit Funding Bank in the Midwest operates rather differently than Ag First Bank here on the East Coast. And I kind of explained some of the differences that we're encountering and how our sister agencies in the Midwest to have loan participation programs operate there as relative to what we were building here in Maryland and probably in the Mid-Atlantic region more broadly as we move forward in time. So we had modeled what we were doing here what we were seeing in other states, sort of taking the best of what we thought was going on in the other states. And after considering the first three projects we funded, we've discovered that offering sort of fixed 33% participation, MARBIDCO participation financing, or fixed 45% MARBIDCO participation financing is kind of difficult in the real world when you're dealing with variables that might need to have a different amount funded by MARBIDCO. So in talking with both Farm Credit and Wayne and the committee about this, we're recommending, and the committee is recommending, that, scroll down a little bit, Tina, that we allow a range of 30, not too far, just a little bit. Go up a little bit. A range of 30% to 49% to be fixed at the time that we agree to the participation, with the floor being 30%. And the exception would be as if the lender wanted us to fund at least $300,000. So just to be clear, the change will be going from either a fixed 33% to 45% to a more realistic 30% to 49% of the project with a floor of 30%. But it could be less than that if our advance was at least $300,000. In other words, trying to make our involvement in the project worth our time and effort to be involved in the project finance. So on that point, I'm happy to take a question if I'm not clear what I just said. Okay, and then related to that is, or not related to that, actually, maybe we ought to take these one at a time. Madam Chair, I think will probably be best to take each of these proposals from the committee and act on them one at a time. I see Sarah's about ready.
Yeah, I can move to that we accept the change from 30 to 49 with lower than 30% if the total is at least 300,000.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, this is Wayne.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Any questions at all on this for Steve? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? Oh, aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we'll go on to the next item then, which is to raise the maximum participation amount just for loan participation projects from $600,000 to $700,000 to reflect the increasing cost of farm purchases, et cetera, today. I will tell you that the Farm Bill is actually raising FSA's land purchase loan program amount to $850,000. So when Congress finally acts on that, they're going to be giving FSA the ability to lend even a greater amount of money for a farm purchase. But what we wanted to do here with this change is leave it at $600,000 for the direct loan program, but increase it to $700,000 for commercial lenders that are moving over to the loan participation model with us. So that raising it by $100,000 would be an incentive to have other lenders move over to the participation option with us, which is a direction we want to head in over time to help minimize our staffing costs down the road. So am I clear what I just said there? Oh, and similarly, we would raise the construction project amount from $300,000 to $350,000 for the participation loan. Am I clear? And I think we'll need a motion.
Okay, is there a motion, please?
So move.
Thank you,
I'll-
Phyllis.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion, any questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the next item increases our overall outstanding loan balance exposure limit from 900,000 to $1 million. We've had a couple one-offs where you have approved $1 million overall exposure limit, and we just want to standardize it so that everybody understands that it's $1 million going forward. And the example here, how this could potentially play out, we help beginning farmer buy their poultry farm, and they need to construct an extra house or two. And the commercial bank wants us to be involved in financing that construction activity on the farm. So that's where we would have a borrower who would have a good repayment history, who needs to borrow more money for that construction project. And this would allow us to have an exposure with that single client of up to $1 million. So that is what's committee's recommended.
I'll move that we make that change from 900,000 to $1 million.
Thank you, Sarah. Second?
I'll second.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we had another item in the committee report that's actually being deleted. Just a little background on this. Juvenile oysters over 1 inch in size are not able to be used generally in oyster aquaculture. And some of our oyster farmers are having a hard time buying larvae right now. So one of them had asked if they could buy market-sized oysters from another oyster farmer and place it temporarily on his lease, waiting for the optimum time to be able to harvest those oysters and sell them. We had talked to DNR about it. We came up with some language for our policy. They called me yesterday and said the change actually is creating more issues for them that they didn't want to have to deal with. So we're putting this on hold. So we're not going to deal with this today. And then finally, we had a very interesting discussion at the committee about the Large Animal Veterinary Assistance Loan Program. Just to refresh your memory, there's a shortage of large animal vets everywhere in the country, and including in Maryland. I don't think we're at crisis levels in Maryland yet, but I know there's definitely a shortage. Other states have set up grant programs to pay off part or all of student loans for recent veterinarians that agreed to service large animal in their states, like up to $100,000 in student loan forgiveness. We don't have money to give away for that purpose, as you know, but we did come up with a loan program to make loans of up to $100,000 to help vets buy the pickup truck that they need, X-ray equipment, other major equipment that they need to work with large animals. So we came up with a loan program that required not only that they be licensed to practice in Maryland and that they agree to service large animal vets, but they have student debt of at least $50,000. And now, Tina, if you'll scroll down. We had initially talked about lowering, and we haven't had any applications to date. So it's been a whole quarter, no applications. Had a couple of phone calls. So we're not ready to give up on the program yet. And so I had floated the idea of lowering the amount of the debt obligations to $25,000. Committee talked about and said, well, maybe we ought to just jettison that and maybe go in a little different direction. We had also recommended lowering interest rate down to 4%. You can see here that the commercial rates, and this is not the incentive financing coming from the dealers, but just if you went to back to for an auto loan, they're running in the 5.5% to 8% range today. Committee had some discussion about it. I had a subsequent conversation with the executive director of the vet board. Kenny, you can scroll down. So we came up, the committee talked about just opening the program up to all veterinarians who agreed to service large animals. I had a conversation with the vet board and learned that they have good records on when veterinarians were licensed going back to 2004, which is about 20 years, which would comport to sort of younger and mid-career veterinarians coming into licensure in the state. So we have a couple of options for you to consider today. One would be, we're calling that option A, just to open up the vet loan program to all veterinarians, no matter where they are in their career, to the loan program at the new lower 4% rate. Or option B would be to open the program up to large animal vets licensed in Maryland since 2004 at the 4% rate. In addition, we want to be able to offer to military veterans the 25% basis points reduction that we offer in our other loan programs. So in either option, we'd like to have that incentive available for it could be active duty Maryland, military potentially, but more likely be retired military. So those are the two options. Option A is all vets. Option B, vets with licensed in Maryland since 2004. And there might be discussion about it, Madam Chair.
Are there any questions? Any ideas, suggestions?
This is Dan. I'd suggest let's expand it to the maximum. And if we find that we are oversubscribed, reel it back in later.
Would it be more judicious to go in the opposite way? Open it to those since 2004, and then after a period of time, then expand it to everybody, knowing that we'd have the resources at that point available to do that. All right, well, it sounds like option A is the preferred option.
Steve, did you have a comment?
Yeah, if whichever option we select, I do like the hometown heroes interest rate, preference. I think that it should be included with whichever option that we decide to go with. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, so is that a recommendation or is that a motion?
Why don't we? I actually like option B better than option A, but I don't want to go against Dan. But I'll make a motion. Let's go with option B with additionally adding the hometown heroes interest rate option and additional incentive.
This is John. Motion to approve.
Okay, I'm looking for a second first, John. Steve
I'll
Conley made,
second. I'll second.
okay, thank you. Now, any further discussion?
Do we want to, if we're saying that this is a step towards sort of we're between the 2 points, do we want to have a time frame? We want to add a time frame at which we would reassess whether or not we need to move a little more aggressively?
Yeah, we can certainly do that, Sarah.
So we've had this program in place for 6 months, you said, Steve?
The beginning of the fiscal year.
Okay, so one quarter.
So how about,
I mean, we could structure it that if we don't, we could propose that we structure it so that if we don't have any takers in the next quarter, then we go back, we ratchet down to option A. That would kind of cover the two thoughts without having, requiring us to reassess. I don't know if anybody wants to think through that as a possibility.
So let me say, we'll go for 3 months with option B, and then beginning February 1st, if it's if the activity is relatively minimal, we'll go to option A. How's that work?
That would be my proposal. We would have to have a different motion. Steve's got thoughts, it looks like.
I think that I'd be acceptable to that friendly amendment. So
great. Okay, so I'll
Okay.
propose that as an amendment to the motion. I suppose that's the technical way to do it. So
Okay, you're saying it would go to February that we would review?
well, I'm going to propose an amendment which states we stick with option B for the next fiscal quarter, so through February until February 1st. And then if we don't have substantial interest between now and then, we like automatically pivot to the option A, which just opens it up to everybody. And then of course we can reassess at any point, but that would be my amendment.
I'll second that motion, that amendment to the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or discussion? I have a question or I have a point that comes to mind. Your vet students don't get finished until May or June. So your youngest ones, the ones that are just finishing their college and getting out and getting that job and needing to buy the truck, are not likely to be active yet. So is reviewing in February too soon? Or do we give it a little bit longer to make it available for some of these newer graduates?
And I kind of agree with the advertising or in the communications about a little bit different structures for the short term for one quarter. People may not get the message.
So you'd like to delay the February date to June or May?
Yeah, or even
Have it kick in the beginning of the next fiscal year?
Yeah.
It's up to the board. Sarah, would you be agreeable for a 5-month delay on the?
Yeah, I'm not pressed too much about it. I mean, I think our concern is that we have had no interest. So I'm not, my stance is we should, I would go with A right away. I would say, let's open it to the more people we can. Either option A or option B, neither one of these in any way inhibits people who are just coming out of school. They would qualify under either standard. So it doesn't make too much of a difference. And my concern is that we see that we have this lack and we're trying to address it. And so far we're not getting any traction. So my inclination is to take a bigger leap, but I don't think there's a huge difference between either one of the options. So I guess I could be persuaded in that direction.
So I guess somebody would need to make an amendment to the motion.
Well, yeah, we'd ask Sarah to withdraw her amendment because we haven't voted yet on it. And then we could restate that and go from there. Revise it.
Yeah, if you want to propose a different amendment, Mary, then that's fine.
Well, I guess a revised amendment with, instead of February, make it later in the spring. Or let's go with what we've got, okay? Sarah has proposed an amendment. We've got a second to that amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment to the motion, say aye. Opposed?
Let's
Okay.
assume the ayes have it.
What?
Steve still has his hand up. I don't know if that's just left from before or if he had something else he wanted to add.
My bad.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Steve, how did everyone vote? I didn't hear the ayes or the nays.
I didn't hear anything either.
I didn't hear anybody's vote at all.
It may be there's some confusion about what was being voted on. The vote was to adopt the motion to approve option B with the 25 basis point reduction for the veterans. But the amendment, the addition was to add a February start date for option A if the option B utilization was low, basically. Do I have that right, Sarah?
I think you have it perfectly, yes. I don't know if we need to define low utilization, but I think it'll be pretty evident,
All right, so comment, we need to know who voted in favor of that.
Okay, so maybe, Mary, maybe we just need to have another vote.
Okay, we'll do another vote since we weren't able to hear responses. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, now you need a vote on the overall proposal. So the proposal would be option B with the Hometown Heroes interest rate reduction, with option A coming into effect if option B is not well utilized over the next 3-month period, basically.
So we need a motion that states that.
I thought that's what we just voted on.
Oh, I thought you voted on the amendment to the motion. I'm sorry.
I think we just created as one new vote. But
Okay, we'll treat it as one.
if you feel like it needs to be just for we can go through and vote it again. But my sense was that was a proposal that we
Everybody
just
good with
voted
that?
on. I am.
I am.
I am.
Yeah.
All right,
I am.
very good. All right, I think this is the final thing. We sent out some changes to the loan admin policies that we wanted you to be aware of. Some minor stuff, and then there's a couple of proposals in there that we wanted to particularly highlight. One is under loan modifications in the policy, I have the authority to extend a borrower's interest-only period for up to additional 12 months instead of 6 months. This comports with my current authority to adjust a payment schedule and re-amortize a loan for a period not to exceed 12 months. So that puts everything together under this 1-year authorization for loan modifications. And then the other proposal, Tina, can you scroll down, please? It deals with ballooning loans. We have a current policy there of a borrower with a ballooning loan has to make a good faith effort to get a refinance with a commercial lender. There's a whole period prescribed for that. And then if they do certain things within a certain period, if they do things appropriately, they would only have a 20 basis point over prime rate increase in their interest rate. And if they didn't do it appropriately, it would be 300 basis points, and there are minimums and maximums. And in the real world, this has not really worked out very well. So we're proposing the following change to the policy. And you can read it there. By the way, the loan committee always has the authority under existing policy to make appropriate adjustments with interest rates to deal with circumstances at hand. One of the problems with imposing higher interest rates is the borrower might not be able to have the cash flow to repay the new repayment schedule obligation. So sometimes you're doing more harm than good by imposing artificially high interest rates. So you can see here the new policy that is being recommended. It simplifies things with how we deal with ballooning loans. So the ballooning loan is where we have we've made a loan to a borrower with, say, a 25-year amortization, but the loan balloons at 15 years, meaning they have to pay us the balance due. So they have to refinance for the money that they owe us. And the procedures were pretty rigid as to how they had to do that within certain time frames. And now we're making it more flexible to deal with the real world as we have discovered things. I see Phyllis has her hand up.
Yeah, when I first read those increased interest rates, it reminded me of debtor prison. You know, if you couldn't pay your loan, we're going to throw you in prison, and that's going to help you pay it better. So I think these are really good, you know, a reassessment of that was a good idea.
Yeah, we're trying to make folks responsible and acting in good faith by having some like milestones or penalties. And yeah, theoretically may be good in real world, not practical. So, and then the other proposals you see there refers back to the attachment we sent you all. We're not going to go through that, but it makes a bunch of just minor clarifying changes to the admin policy. So the motion that would be needed here is to approve the changes to the loan administration policy.
I move that
Make a
we make
motion
this.
to approve the changes.
I'll second Phyllis.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we have a motion to approve the changes to the administration policy. Is there any further discussion, any questions that we need to have cleared up? Okay, sounds like we're understanding what you're asking for, Steve. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we've covered everything from the programs committee. I want to thank the committee again for the work. We had a very good discussion a couple weeks ago, as I mentioned. We're now to the point in the agenda where you can ask about any of our programs, core loans, specialty loans, core grants, specialty grants. I've talked some about some of the updates there, but we want to give you a chance to inquire about anything there in the loan and grant department. And hearing no questions, we're going to then shift over to the next generation program. Our colleague Allison Rowe is on. And Tina, do you have her report? So Allison, you just want to briefly highlight where we are?
Yes. Like Steve said, last year was a slower year than normal for next gen. However, we are getting quite a bit of applications already into this part of the fiscal year. So we have processed 4, 1 is approved. The board just approved 2, and we'll have 1 coming very shortly. So far, we haven't done any termination releases. That is still kind of early for the program, but I have been in contact with MALF, so we do expect some to be repaid and MALF easements placed on those. Tina, if you could scroll down. This is just an overview of the projects that have closed. We do have 2 that are pending. One will be closing next week. And then we'll be setting up the other one for closing. And then just an overview of the acreage. I don't think it's changed much since our last board meeting, since we've only had 1 additional approval since then. And then just an overview, out of the 41 projects of Next Gen, we have helped to preserve a little over 4,300 acres. And then moving on to the small acreage Next Gen. We do have one that is in the hopper for, we're reviewing that now and underwriting. So that will be going to our review committee to look over, which is good. I don't think we received a small acreage project last year. It was approved, but it did get withdrawn. And nothing has changed again for the acreage. And I believe it's about 100 acres that we've permanently preserved for the small acreage program. Are there any questions from anyone about the Next Gen or small acreage Next Gen program?
Okay, thank you very much, Allison. And it just occurs to me now that we have Faith Elliott Rossing, who many of you know, longtime board member, past board chair. She's volunteered to serve on the Next Gen Program Review Committee. So we need a motion to appoint her to the committee.
Okay.
I'll move that we appoint Faith to the committee.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Although, excuse me, any discussion? I doubt that there will be, other than saying Faith will be great. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye. Yes.
All right.
That was delayed, but we'll accept it. The motion carried anyway.
All righty. Moving on then to the project acceptance report. We have 65 projects for you to accept that have taken place since the last time the board met. And here's the link. These just put the projects into the record that you have accepted them. And we need a motion.
I'll move that we accept the projects that are in the list.
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion, any questions? All those in favor of accepting the motion to approve the activities, say aye.
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 And opposed? All right, the motion carried.
All right, we're up to the board officer nominating process. Just to remind everyone that the board's annual meeting is the first meeting of the new calendar year. And so we elect our chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer during that meeting. So in the past, you have appointed a nominating committee to discuss who would be appropriate to serve in that role. I believe Charlotte was our committee chair last year, and ACRA also served on the committee. So I think the board needs to appoint the nominating committee today so it can have a recommendation at the annual meeting.
Okay, any volunteers?
I'll continue if Charlotte continues as chair.
I like that.
Charlotte appears to have stepped away from her desk, but she has agreed to do that.
Okay.
That was a boss move.
Yeah, I'll continue if it's desired.
Okay. Well, it sounds like this is the opportune time to do it since Charlotte's away. We have AC and Charlotte have volunteered to be our nominating committee.
There could be more members.
There you go. There you go. Anyone else would like to participate? We'd welcome that. We're not hearing anything, Steve, so I think we're going to end up going to a vote. All those in favor of accepting the nominating committee?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
All right. Those opposed? That motion carried also. Thank you very much.
All righty. Well, we are making good time now. We're back on track. Under my report, I do just want to tell you that the Food System Resiliency Council continues to take a fair amount of my time, although it has thankfully slowed down a little bit. They've reorganized somewhat, and I think the overall the new structure is going to be less time intensive for me going forward, in part because they've going into the new legislative session, they're not going to be taking positions on bills formally anymore. I found myself being the voice of production ag during some of the meetings, and so going forward, I think it's going to work better. Also, really appreciate the very active engagement from many at MDA. Mark Powell, Martin Kroll, Secretary Addix have all been very active, and I think it's going rather smoothly thus far. So, but they've had a lot of meetings over the last, I guess, 3 years now. Mary?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that if you could give me any insight, I would appreciate it. Next meeting in November, I've been asked to participate on a panel. They're bringing in some producers from a variety of different farming enterprises, and I'd love some helpful hints ahead of time if you could share those. So maybe you and I can get together on that.
Oh, absolutely. Be pleased to brief you on that. That's something actually we've encouraged, something that was needed for the full council, not just the Environment Production Committee, which deals directly with the ag related issues rather than food distribution issues.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, be delighted to chat with you about that. Okay. We've been busy with outreach this fall, very busy, it seems. Events everywhere. And of course, we're coming up into an even busier time with the farm groups having their winter meetings, including University of Maryland University of Maryland Eastern Shore Small Farms Conference coming up, and the Farm Bureau Conference coming up, etc. I think I'm going to stop there in the interest of time. And we've added an item to the agenda to let any of our agency colleagues just share if there's something they want to bring up that's particularly timely or otherwise noteworthy. No obligation, just wanted to let our agency colleagues have a chance to let the board know that anything that's of particular interest to you and might be of interest to the board. Steve, is there anything at the MDA that especially noteworthy?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, there being no other updates, I can tell you that the next meeting will be held within a week of February 1st. On either side of that date would be traditional. We will send out a doodle poll January 2nd. We can do it earlier, but the response would be low. And coming back from the new year, everybody kind of has their heads back in the game. And we'll send that out on January 2nd. And try to set the meeting date when most people are available. So with that, Madam Chair, we have come up to the announcements and other items slot on the agenda. So anything anybody wants to raise? Charlotte, are there any announcements from you and the RMC? Any awards announcements? Things of that sort? She's got her Rural Awards program coming up shortly. I think the deadline was yesterday, actually. So, all right, Madam Chair, turn it back to you.
All right. I'd say at this point, we are ready to move into closed session. Do I hear a motion for us to consider other matters and close the open session?
And if it would be helpful if somebody read the motion in full.
Yeah.
I can do it. I move that we move to closed session to consider matters that concern proposals for business or industrial organization to locate, expand, or remain in the state, to consider the investments of public funds, and to consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation, and to adjourn the meeting thereafter.
Okay, second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? I thank all those that were participating that will now be leaving us. Of course, the board, we need to stay together for a few more minutes, but allow Jill to adjust the feed.